Live from downtown Vancouver. This is the Kid Carson Show with Nira Aurora.
All right, good morning, 9:12. It's Vancouver's number one hit music station, the B94.5. Kid, Nira, Mandy, and Andrew the intern. We got a special guest in the studio right now. And this is especially interesting for me because, Nira, as you know, I'm in a long-term relationship for the first time in a long time.
It's been a very long time.
And it's, I don't remember the last time I was in a relationship for, well, how long? 7-8 months it's been around there.
Yeah, I mean, mine is 7 years, yours is 7 months. It's a big difference.
And even 7 months, you know, to be blunt and having sex with the same person.
Oh, wow.
You know, it's great. But you start to think when you are in a very serious relationship for the first time at this age, you start to think, okay, well, this could really be the last person I ever have sex with.
Yeah, it could be, yes.
Yeah.
Now I'm saying, well, this is going to be the last person I ever have sex with, unless my girlfriend decides we want to become swingers or something.
Right, okay.
But we can only dream, you know. So we have in studio here someone to talk about monogamy and sexual fidelity in the 21st century. Please welcome to the studio, Trevor Warren, relationship counselor.
Welcome, Trevor.
Hey.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Morning.
Good morning.
This is really fascinating. A friend of mine, who's a friend of yours, kind of introduced us.
Right.
And it's actually where I go to my naturopathic doctor, one of the people that work there, who administer my vitamin IVs that I go for once a week, started bringing up your name. And it was actually because we were talking a lot about my new relationship at the time, and she would bring up little things, and she's like, you really need to meet Trevor Warren.
Right.
This guy's great. I guess you guys went to school together, and she says that you're her mentor. And so here we are finally a couple months later, able to get you in the studio.
Right on. Yeah.
So let's talk about monogamy. I don't even know where to begin.
I was going to say that. How do you start
Where do you begin?
with a topic like this?
Well, I think the context in which it comes from is, so I've been doing counseling for a long time, 20 years, and the last 10 years I've focused specifically on couples. And what I've noticed pretty consistently is the kinds of issues that walk in the door. Half the clients that are dealing with some kind of infidelity, or they're dealing with past infidelity, or they're dealing with a sexless marriage, or and splitting up, divorcing because the relationship is not holding its energy anymore. So it got me thinking, what's going on here in our relationships, and there's that proliferation of pornography and all sorts of things going on where our sexuality is not seeming, and the idea of monogamy and the model where sexual fidelity is part of that agreement, we don't seem to be doing so well at that. The estimates of infidelity range from like 50% to 70% in people by the time they reach the age of 40. They've had some kind of adultery. So it's got me questioning the model.
And is it because there's lack of love in relationships that people are cheating, or?
No. I see, that's the thing, is I think that we link up sex and love, and while when it's really wonderful when that's happening, they're actually they can be two different animals. I mean, you can be attracted to somebody that you don't have feelings of love for, and you can be in love with somebody and not have any kind of sexual polarity going on either. So they're actually really two distinct things.
But if you do have them together, then you've got the
Yahoo!
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Then it's
But that's the challenge, right? When we first meet somebody, that initial kind of attraction period, that infatuation, that honeymoon period, those things are together, but typically, almost inevitably, whether that's 2 months or 2 years, that energy kind of tends to fade.
And is it because we don't understand each other's needs, men and women, or what is the reason behind that? Like, why we say till death do us part,
Right.
And why aren't we able to fulfill that commitment that we make?
Well, I guess that's the question. I got asked a question at the very tail end of a 5-minute radio interview once before. Are we naturally monogamous? And I was like, right. So, I think what I'm noticing is that the stats are telling us that this idea that we need to be have sexual fidelity with one person over the course of our life is being challenged. And so the question is, what is the nature of who we are as human beings? Monogamy as a model is a relatively recent development in the last 1,500 years. We've been around, say, 2.5 million years, and prior to monogamy coming into play in like the 5th century, there were all sorts of models of relationship. We are diverse creatures, both sexually and in our relationships. But the church in the 5th century, when I started to research, so where did monogamy come from?
That's what I was just wondering.
I'm curious.
It's a very interesting question.
How did we decide that we can only be with one person?
Well, here's the deal. Basically, hunter-gatherer models, when we started to move into an agricultural way of being, we began to amass land and property. And also around that same time when things became more male-dominated, patriarchal from a more matriarchal point of view, we had to track lineage. We had to track who gets the cows, who gets the farm. And when it's obvious, it's easy to tell who the mother is of a child. It's not so easy back then. We didn't have paternity tests back then. Who the father was of a child. So the church at that time said, you may only be in relationship with one person your entire life, and you must be sexually fidelitous because we need to know where the farm goes.
To the son, down through the family.
To the son.
Okay.
We needed to control women's sexuality and say, no, you can only be sexually with one person. So that was actually the origins of monogamy, and that's 1,500 years ago. So the question is now, we don't marry so much for we marry for love.
Yes.
It's not a contractual agreement anymore. So now what we're looking at is a model that may or may not be at least congruent with the diversity of which we show up in our relationships, right? And our sexual needs.
And we always end up saying, we seem to, as humans, have a pretty short-term memory.
Yeah.
Even things that happened 40 years ago, and
sure.
the racism and all those things that were so crazy things that happened in our parents' lifetime.
Yeah.
We tend to, it almost seems like science fiction or the opposite of that. I guess it seems like it didn't even happen because whatever is happening around us now is the way it is. And we just say, well, it's always been like that. So we just always want to continue that. But you're saying that not too long ago, it wasn't like this.
Not too long ago, but relatively speaking. But you're right. I mean, this is how it's always been, but it really hasn't always been.
Yeah.
And then, when you were saying that was to control women's sexuality, was male sexuality also being controlled at that point too, or was it really to control more of the female sexuality?
There's another part of this that's a little controversial, which is that the church around that, the Roman Catholic Church around that same time, decreed that anyone who dies without heirs, that money would go to the church.
Oh.
So if you were having multiple partners, the chances of you having heirs increased significantly. So the chances of the church receiving the money when there were no heirs became much less. So there was a confinement for both the male and the females in terms of their sexuality.
Okay.
Wow.
Which is a theory.
I want to come back and maybe talk about what's next. If we're having problems like this, I mean, you have counseled thousands and thousands of people and couples.
Yeah, over 1,000. Yeah.
How do we get over this hump? How do we get over this
tricky question?
Yeah, so I want to get your thoughts on that when we come back in a second here. We are talking to Trevor Warren, who's the clinical director and therapist who founded CoreQuest, which is a counseling group in North Vancouver, founded back in 1996, and the website corequest.ca. More with Trevor Warren in 1 second.
The Kid Carson Show and continuous hit music. The Beat 94.5.